everyone, this is our second in our series of identifying forage for rabbits. These are the videos that I'm filming on behalf of Parsley's Warren, which is the small rabbit sanctuary that we run. So if you like the videos, if you find them helpful, please pop over to Parsley's Warren Facebook, where there'll be instructions on how to give a small donation, which we'd be really grateful for. So today what we're going to be looking at is cow parsley, which is one of the most popular forages for rabbits. It's popular both with the owners because it's really easy to find, and it's also popular with the rabbits who absolutely love it. But we're also going to be looking at how you tell the difference between that and hemlock, because all of the things that look like cow parsley really confuse people. So first of all, we're just going to look at cow parsley. Then I'm going to actually have to go for a walk and we're going to do a separate bit of filming about hemlock and do some comparisons. And then I'm going to come back again for the third part and just have a look at the real detail of it, a bit about the Latin names, which I always like to use, and also a bit more about comparison. So here we are. This is our cow parsley. As you can see, it's quite a tall plant once it goes into flower. It has a very ferny-like leaf, which we're going to be looking at in some detail. And it then has a flower shoot come up from the basal leaves, which has further leaves up it, but most importantly has these lovely umbrella-like, and again it's one of our umbelliferas, as they are. It's an umbellifer, but it's actually from the general family Umbellifera. These lovely umbrella-like white flowers. However, do not try and use these to distinguish it from any of the other numerous umbelliferas that we have in that family. Now, just to mention that although I'm calling it cow parsley, other people call it Queen Anne's lace. Other people call it sheep's parsley. That's in areas of the country where you don't have so many cows. They call it sheep's parsley. And I'm sure it has many other common names. However, if you stick to its Latin name, it's Anthriscus sylvestris. Now, I know that many of you feel that perhaps learning Latin names is a step beyond what you want to do in foraging for rabbits, but it really will help you when you're trying to get the relationship between different plants, particularly when you're trying to think, well, if one plant in this family is not toxic, how about the other one? This seems to be in the same family. So it is something I'm going to talk about in each of these videos. So the main identification points with our lovely Anthriscus sylvestris, or to me, cow parsley. So it comes up at about this time of year. We're filming in, I've lost track because of lockdown, COVID-19 lockdown. Where are we? We're in the last quarter of April. So it starts showing very, very early, sometimes as early as February in a sunny spot if we've had a mild winter. You'll see it growing in amongst hogweed here. We did actually do hogweed in the first video. Very commonly it'll grow in grassy verges on the sides of roads. It'll grow along wood banks, and it grows usually with this very similar mix. So in here we've got grasses, we've got nettles because it's quite a rich area in here. We've got our hogweed. And actually we've got some goosegrass, which I'm going to film as another point. And it all grows from a single stem, which has like a parsnip kind of root at the bottom. I'm not going to uproot mine, but it's very, very similar to the hogweed root, which you may remember is also called cow parsnip. Different thing, but cow parsnip. So here we are. Oops, I've got one hogweed in here. There we go. So the main distinguishing points for our cow parsley, first of all, the stem. Now the stem is really distinguishing because, very similar to our hogweed, it has a celery-like stem with this very firm indentation. That is true of all of the cow parsley apart from where it comes up and makes this flower shoot where it's going to flower. And at that point, it is circular, but it is not as hollow as the hemlock I'm going to show you later. The other distinguishing point about the cow parsley is that it has little ridges. If you I find it's best to close your eyes when you do this. I hope I'm not on the actual video here because I look a complete idiot closing my eyes and stroking cow parsley. But you can feel that it's slightly got little ridges, again, very much like celery. I'm hoping you all know what celery looks like. I'm a bit of a loser if you don't. If not, rush out to your nearest supermarket and buy celery as soon as you're not in lockdown. It then has these very ferny leaves. Now, they're not actually very shiny. This one's slightly shining in the sunshine, but let's take this one. This is a more typical one, actually. Very slightly darker, but more typical in being less shiny. This one's slightly shiny because it's brand new. It's a new leaf. This is a usual slightly duller look to it. And as you can see, again, it's got a straight stem, then opposing leaf stalks here, and then on each leaf stalk you've got further little opposing leaves as you go up, every single one. So drop those down for a minute so you can see that. So what looks at first sight like just a long ferny leaf is actually two opposing, then two opposing, and actually if we go down to that, they're not quite opposing leaves. They're all part of the same leaf. In a way, that's because it is actually related to, at the very basic stem, so to speak, the hogweed, which has that same pattern. The back is very slightly downy feeling, very slightly downy, like very lightly peachy fur, and it's a paler colour as well, as you can tell, front and back. When it comes up to its flower stalk, it does change slightly. Now this is where people do get confused because it can be purple as it joins the stems. You can see that purpley colour. But you can still tell the difference between this and hemlock. You'll see hemlock in a minute. It's very blotchy purple on hemlock because you've got these ridged stems, the ridgeness, and it's not a blotch, it's actually a sort of purple colour. Now this you can feed from the very first little leaflets that come up. It seems a bit cruel, I know, all the way through to when it's flowering, and indeed it will dry quite well. So that you can dry it for consumption by rabbits in autumn or even winter. So it's an ideal foodstuff. The only catch with it is, of course, people are cautious because they're worried that they will mistake it for hemlock or for one of the other slightly less toxic than hemlock plants with which it has a relationship. So the next little bit of this video will actually talk about hemlock and the differences between hemlock and cow parsley. And we'll edge it on.
It's recording.
So I don't have any hemlock in the garden for fairly obvious reasons, and I also don't have any, very fortunate that there isn't any in the hedgerows in the village that I live in. Partly because it's a very pastoral village, and so anywhere like that they're going to have got rid of all the poisonous plants in the hedgerows over the centuries. So I've taken a walk out this morning so that I can find some hemlock to show to you. So if you come closer into this so that we can actually have a really good look at it. And the idea behind today is to tell the difference between cow parsley and hemlock. So hemlock, first of all, is an incredibly deep bluey green colour. It's a colour that botanists and indeed flower rangers or florists call glaucous. So that refers to the bluey shade of it, and I hope that's coming through on the photograph. Where I'm actually going to, when I finish, I'm going to pick some of this and take it home and probably also video a bit in the shade. So I've ended up standing in the sunshine here. I hope you can also see, because it is sunny, that it's quite shiny. it almost reflects back, and that's one of those key points. Now I have actually, if I can find it, I've just picked some cow parsley from nearby, and you'll see the difference. So it's paler. Now that's not always to say that all cow parsley is paler. Obviously plants vary, same way that people vary, plants vary. But it doesn't have the shininess, and cow parsley is never shiny, and it never has a bluey tint. It's always that sort of slightly yellowy tint. Even if it's a darker colour, it'll still be yellowy and not bluey. Sorry, it's not very technical, I know, but it's the best way to express it. The other one, I'll be bringing the cow parsley back in a minute. The other one with hemlock is that it is usually blotchy. Now, if you watched my hogweed versus giant hogweed video, you'll know that blotchy is one of my favourite terms for describing a lot of these toxic plants. So can you see this, like, it's really horrible. I mean, you wouldn't voluntarily eat that anyway, would you? So, and down at the very base of the stem, you can see that blotchiness all goes to red. Now, as we've seen on normal cow parsley, there can be a red tinge, just like on normal hogweed, there's a red tinge to some of it, but never that blotchiness. As we cut a piece, and you'll note I am wearing gloves here. I should say hemlock is very toxic indeed. Like giant hogweed, it will cause blistering, but more importantly with this, it affects the nerves. It was traditionally used as a poison. It's a quick acting poison. It's very, very nasty. It causes paralysis of the limbs, finally paralyzing your heart, so you're literally alive while the rest of you becomes paralyzed bit by bit, and you know you're going to die. It was used by the Romans. So this is a really toxic poisonous plant. Anyway, so here we are with it, and the points I want to make about it are that unlike cow parsley, it is round or oval with no kind of celery-like piece in the stem. So again, if I can get my handy bit of, I realise they're very different sizes at the moment, but you can see that this has a sort of celery shape and this is round. If I just do that with another piece that's not so near the joint of my cow parsley. Okay, I'm a bit restricted as to my cow parsley at the moment because hemlock and cow parsley, although they can share the same growing space, often don't. Hemlock is tending to take over from cow parsley where it appears. Hemlock is an invasive plant, literally invading and taking over. So it's rounded. It's also smooth stemmed, or rather when I say it's round, it's kind of squashed rounded. It's smooth stemmed, so it doesn't have ridges along the stem, unlike cow parsley, which has ridges. And I'll be showing you some, or I will have shown you, this is difficult to say, isn't it? Because the first part of the video is, I'll have been showing you cow parsley. So, and that's ridged. So very, very different. The other thing is the smell. Ugh. This actually smells horrible. Now, I'm very well aware, because when I run foraging courses, I'll do things like pass this around and I'll say, this smells absolutely horrid. And some people will smell it and go, I can't smell a thing. And so I've learned that some people just don't have a great sense of smell. But for a lot of this, a lot of us, this will smell really rank, basically. The other thing for noticing hemlock, is that the previous season's flowerers will often still be surviving through into spring. So as you go along the hedgerows, this is actually a wood bank on the edge of an arable field, you will notice not only this sort of sudden shiny, glaucous looking plant, but also standing up until the spring, you'll see these very tall stem shoots from last year's flowers. I made a mistake just now and called it a hogweed. The reason being that this is actually one of these indicative things of giant hogweed as well. If you ever see giant hogweed, you will see huge, great stems. It's because they're so thick, the flower stems are so thick. One final point before we leave this. Obviously the piece that I'm filming at the moment is huge, and you're thinking, well, this is an enormous plant, how could I possibly mistake it for a small cow parsley? If we turn round, and I'm not sure if Steve's filming's up to this, here we go. Here's a young small one, so it isn't obvious just from size, but here's an even tinier one, and very indicatively, if I pick it, it's more difficult to pick, by the way, than cow parsley. And there you go, there's the blotching. Whoops, it's got a bit of dandelion with it, actually. There's the blotching, it's round, and it's jointed quite differently. I always say one final thing, but one final thing, actually, in comparing them, is that this is actually a more ferny-like leaf than cow parsley. It's more, it's a sort of narrow leaf, it's more indented, it's more what we think of as ferny. The cow parsley, which I've just abandoned back here somewhere, here we go, is not quite such a fine serration to the leaves. Can you see the difference there? I admit it's one of those things that, you know, it's okay if you've got them both together, but if you're new to foraging, you probably still worry that if you just saw this on its own, you couldn't. But once you get your eye into the difference in the leaf as well, they really are a very different plant. So that's what should be the middle part of the video. I should have filmed the first part on cow parsley on its own first, and the next part is going to be back indoors. I'm just going to show you some pictures in a couple of books to really firm up, and also perhaps talk again a little bit about the Latin names, which will show you how they're related and how they're not related. So thanks very much. So this is the part of the video where I just show you a couple of books and show you the entries for the plant that we're dealing with in this particular video, in this case cow parsley, also though hemlock. So first of all, of course, Foraging for Rabbits by myself, Twigs Way, which is sold by the Rabbit Welfare Association and Fund, which is actually, you can get that on their website. So just go to their shop and have a look for it. Now, in this book, Cow Parsley, this is done alphabetically, by the way, this particular book. So Cow Parsley is on page 19. It's got a nice description of it. It tells you some of the other common names for it, including sheep's parsley, Queen Anne's lace. Also tells you the Latin name for it, Anthriscus sylvestris. Sylvestris, by the way, means woodland. So it's very much a plant that originally would have been on the edges of woodland. A tall, hollow-stemmed perennial umbellifera, which grows very rapidly in early spring, sometimes as early as January in a mild year. So I describe the leaves, which are technically tripinnate, and also when you can pick it. I've actually put in here that it's difficult to dry and not worth the effort, as it's an early spring growth. So if you did pick it, you'd be drying it for the following winter. That's quite a long time to keep it. But it can be dried if you're a keen dryer of forage. Do not mistake it, as I say, for fool's parsley or hemlock, and we have already looked at hemlock in this video. It's one of my top plants for feeding to rabbits, so particularly in the young spring growth. So the other book which I'm using for these videos, because I think it has very attractive but nevertheless very clear pictures, its only glitch as far as novice foragers are concerned is that it is divided up into plant families, which can confuse people at an early stage. And that's this lovely one, text by David Streeter, illustrations Ian Garrard. My copy is quite old, and I suspect that you can get it on Amazon or eBay secondhand now. So turning to the illustrations, which I pre-marked, here we go. Our cow parsley shows on the page of Umbelliferae, which are now actually reclassified as Apiaceae, but let's Apiaceae. I still, I'm afraid, refer to them by their old name, and they're on plate 45 of this. Now, also on this plate, as you will see, are lots and lots of other Umbellifera that people do worry about. So golden chervil, knotted hedge parsley, rough chervil. I have to say, out of all of these, I think I have in all my foraging time met with rough chervil and upright hedge parsley, but they are really unlikely. Those huge hedgerow, hedge side verges are full of cow parsley at this time of year. Some of the others flower slightly later as well, so the cow parsley is the earliest. The only other thing that you might really have problems with, as we've said throughout this video, is that you will have problems with hemlock, and that is the one people really worry about. Hemlock's on the next plate, plate 46 of this book, and again it shows you those very typical blotches, the darker colour leaves. It can't actually show you glossiness, which is one of the key points. I have to say, once you've got your eye in for hemlock, you will see it even when you're driving along at kind of 30, 40 miles an hour. It will catch, you know, the corner of your eye as you're whizzing along those motorway embankments, which is where you see it most. In my experience, hemlock has become a plant very much of disturbed and waste spaces, with cow parsley mostly still the one in hedgerows, although that is changing because it's an invasive species. By the way, hemlock, although it's generally in the same family, Umbellifera, it is a different species. It's Conium maculatum, which tells you it's quite a long way away, relationship-wise, to our Anthriscus sylvestris, which is what allows, so to speak, the hemlock to be very, very toxic, cow parsley not so. That's something we're probably going to talk about when we get on to something like the willows, the salixes. So once you know something's a salix, it's safe, even if it's not the willow that you're used to. Whereas this one, you've got Anthriscus sylvestris and Conium maculatum, so they can be very different. So just finally, what we've had a look at today. Oh, I must remember I'm not meant to rotate the camera. So we've looked at our cow parsley, our lovely yellowy spring green. It does get darker later on. It's narrow stem, it's celery-like. Get that into focus. It's celery-like stem, and even when it gets the column-like stem ready for the flower head to come up on, it's still very ridged, and although it is purple in places, it's not blotchy. It's paler on the underside and slightly downy. Our hemlock, I brought one home with us. I'm going to be very careful to make sure it never gets near the rabbits, and it goes in the bin after this. Our hemlock has a shiny leaf. It's bluey, that glaucous colour. On the underside, it loses the shine and the glaucous on the underside, but nevertheless, it's still darker. It's really the top one that you want to look at, the top side of it. And then the stem doesn't have any sort of downiness on it. It's very blotchy and it's smooth, and it also stinks to high heaven. And one of the things I forgot to say is that its alternate name is stinkweed or devil's parsley. So that's it for today, for this session for cow parsley and hemlock. I hope you've enjoyed them and found them useful. If you have, then please pop on to our new Rabbit Sanctuary Facebook page, which is Parsley's Warren, no apostrophe in Parsley's. If you go on there, you'll find out why there isn't an apostrophe. And just put in a small donation using the PayPal that's up there, which is tweaksway@me.com is my PayPal. If everybody who watched these just paid in £1, then we'd have enough to pay our current vet bill, which would be fantastic. So thank you very much indeed. Bye.